Hello, my name's David Seaman, and this is the Three Lions podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Three Lions podcast. My name is Russell Osborne and this is an independent England football supporters podcast. I hope you're keeping well, especially in this heat wave that we've currently got here in England. Now, I've got a fan on. I'm hoping that the sound of that I can eliminate when I edit this up. The window is shut and it's hot, but I'll continue. I won't let it bother me too much. It is summertime, isn't it? I shouldn't complain. Now, a couple of months back, I looked towards this summer's tournaments for our various age level squads. Now, I think it's time to revisit that and update you with what's happened. And as I'm sure you are aware, Euro 2025 is underway for our Lionesses. I released the preview for that recently with Dom Smith, and I'll be keeping you updated as the tournament goes along. But as always, you can find that and many other episodes at your podcast provider of choice or threelionspodcast.com. Also, recently, I looked at each of the hosting countries for the 2026 World Cup. I spoke with people who live in Canada, Mexico and the United States. Again, those can be found at your provider of choice. And I'm going to come back to the World Cup towards the end of this episode, so stick around for that, as I think FIFA may have dropped the ball somewhat. But let's go back to May and the under-17s Euros that were being held in Albania. Our young Lions were in a group with Italy, Belgium and the Czech Republic. Now, we began with a 1-1 draw with Belgium. That was followed by a 4-2 defeat to Italy, and then a 4-2 victory in our favour over the Czech Republic. So 4 points earned. Italy topped the group with a maximum 9 points. Belgium, they were second, also with 4 points, but they had a goal difference of +1, which meant that they progressed and we were coming home. The final of the under-17 Euros was between Portugal and France. The Portuguese lifted the trophy, winning 3-0. Now, our young Lionesses took to the under-19 Euros in Poland. Now, they finished third in their group and they exited the tournament. Although in doing so, they qualified for the 2026 under-20 Women's World Cup. It's just the way they do that with regards to qualification. They began the tournament by defeating the Netherlands 2-1, so it was a promising start. But it was followed up with a 4-1 defeat to Portugal, then a last-minute 1-0 loss to Spain. The final of that saw Spain go up against France, and the Spanish won 4-0 in a fairly one-sided match. That was the young Lionesses. The young Lions, they had their under-19 Euros. That was in mid-June in Romania. They finished third in their group behind the Netherlands and Germany. Now, we drew with Norway 2-2 in our opening game, and we followed it up with a spectacular game. You may have read about this one. It ended 5-5 against Germany. 5-1 down at half-time, we came back with 4 second-half goals in the space of 11 minutes. Wow. Sadly, the Young Lions, their final group game against the Dutch, saw us go down 4-2 and exit the tournament. Now, for those of an older persuasion, the Dutch, they featured a player by the name of Lucas Vennegoor of Hesselink. You know that surname, don't you? He is son of Jan Vennegoor of Hesselink. You may remember he turned out for both Celtic and Hull. Gosh, makes you feel old, that. He and his Dutch side would make it to the final where they faced Spain, and the Dutch would win it by 1-0. Now, the big one, really, for the young Lions was the Under-21s Euros. This was being held in Slovakia, and we travelled there as defending champions after winning it in Georgia in 2023. The big question was, could they retain that trophy? Well, it was a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde performance in the group stages. We were drawn in Group B. We opened it with a 3-1 victory over the Czech Republic. There was then a 0-0 draw with Slovenia, which was enough to see us into the quarter-finals at the time, before facing Germany in the last group game. Now, as we were already through, the result wasn't essential. We lost 2-1, but we were through. But we were into the quarter-finals where we faced Spain, obviously a tall order. Memories of the 2023 final were being mentioned. This was again a game the boys came through. This time a 3-1 victory, and with it, they were into the semi-finals to face the Dutch. Harvey Elliott, he got a brace in that semi-final against the Netherlands. They won 2-1, and they were in the final once again, and they would face Germany. So the chance to win back-to-back finals was on. Manager Lee Carsley selected the same starting lineup that defeated the Dutch, and in the first half that, well, frankly, it was a dominant England side. We were 2-0 up within 24 minutes. Goals from Harvey Elliott and Omari Hutchinson of Liverpool and Ipswich, respectively. Both of these had had great tournaments and deservedly got their goals. But the young Lions, well, they had chances to increase that margin, but they didn't take them. And the Germans equalised on the stroke of half-time, which really changed the direction of the second half. They came out pushing more, and it could be said it was a game of two halves. They eventually equalised and forced the game into extra time. Although if you watched it, you would have seen that they could have won it in the last minute. The crossbar saving England, and it wouldn't be the last time. Now, throughout the tournament, the temperatures, well, they were hot over there in Slovakia, but this game, they were dropping a little bit, playable. And temperatures is something I want to touch on in a moment with regards to next year's World Cup. But back to the final, an extra time. Lee Carsley replaced Harvey Elliott with Jonathan Rowe of Marseille. And within 2 minutes of the restart, he had glanced a header past the keeper from a Tyler Morton cross. He had got the winning goal. Germany kept the pressure on, and once again, in the last minute of the game, they struck the crossbar. But England held on, held their nerve, and just as they did in 1982 and 1984, they won back-to-back Under-21 Euros. Huge congratulations to them, to the players, to Lee Carsley, to his whole setup. Well done. But where do we go from here? I posted on Twitter the day before the game. Progression of England's young Lions to seniors has understandably excelled in recent years. 10 from that 2023 Under-21s Euro side have won 55 senior caps, and 6 of them have been selected by Thomas Tuchel. Obviously, we wanted them to win on Saturday in that final and the players to advance, but we need to be very careful about the weight of expectation we put on their shoulders. And that's kind of the same thing as I said back in 2023. It is a great result for the side. It's a great result for the players, for Carsley, for the FA. But we need to be careful about putting these players up on a pedestal. Remember just how old they are. And undoubtedly, some will progress. Some will become mainstays in the senior side. Not immediately. We may see 1 or 2 next year in the World Cup, should we get there. But the real fruits, I think, from these from these two under-21 winning teams, 23 and 25, will be the 2028 Euros. But for some of those players that picked up their winners' medals, this might be as good as it gets for them. Sadly, this might be the pinnacle of their growth as a pro. You just have to go back looking at previous under-21 sides to see how some players just fall away. It's just nature, really. Some to get to 21 and be that good, and you just hit your peak, whereas others will hit their peak later, and others will continue their progression. We just have to be careful with the amount of expectation we put on their shoulders. But Harvey Elliott, he won the player of the tournament, helped by his 5 goals, but there's so many other candidates for player of the tournament, especially from England. James McAtee, Tino Livramento, Alex Scott, Charlie Cresswell. Any one of those could make a breakthrough to the senior side. Livramento, in fact, has already made one appearance for the seniors last year against Ireland in that 5-0 win. Gerald Quansah has been selected for a senior squad also before. But I saw an article about former players of the tournament for at under 21 level, and Harvey Elliott is in fantastic company. Let me just roll back through some previous under 21 player of the tournament winners. Rudi Völler of Germany, Laurent Blanc, France, Luis Figo of Portugal, Fabio Cannavaro and Andrea Pirlo, both of Italy, they won it. Petr Cech of the Czech Republic won it 1 year. Klaas-Jan Huntelaar of the Netherlands, he won it. The Spanish, they were on a great roll at one point. Juan Mata, Thiago and Fabian Ruiz were all players of the under-21 tournaments. Last time around, 2023, when we picked up the trophy, Anthony Gordon was the player of the tournament, and Harvey Elliott now follows him. So congratulations to him. And you just see some of those players, the levels that they have gone on to achieve. Figo, Pirlo, amazing players. So, yeah, good luck to those players. But let me just say again, please, let's just not put too much weight on their shoulders. But Thomas Tuchel, he watched from the stands out there in Slovakia. This after he flew back from the Club World Cup. He saw the man he took over from, Lee Carsley, once again pick up a trophy. But you have to wonder, what was really going through his mind, Tuchel's mind? His homeland has just lost a final to his employers. What did he really think? Who was he really looking at? I'm sure he was looking at both and appreciating both. But it does make you wonder. Anyway, it's a smart trophy, the under-21 Euros. Not many trophies you see made of glass. This one is sort of enclosed with silver handles winding around it. But we do have to talk England manager. Tuchel is only contracted until the end of the 2026 World Cup. He's already said if he wins it, he wants to stay on and have a stab at the home Euros of 2028. But what if he doesn't win it? Who takes over from him? Well, the usual answer in recent times has been Eddie Howe. But now, given that Carsley is a double Euro under-21 winning manager for England, his name has to be thrown in the ring, doesn't it? Of course, we know he had 6 matches in the autumn of 2024. And I know the first one you'll mention and remember is that Greece defeat at Wembley. I get that. But I think you also have to remember he saw us promoted from Nations League B back to League A with 5 victories. When the moment comes around, obviously he'll be a couple of years older, a couple of years wiser. He may reflect back on his time in charge and change his mind as to whether he wants to take it on full time. Many of the players who won him that first trophy will probably be established internationals. Mention Anthony Gordon, There's Cole Palmer as well. Many of them will be, well, double figures of caps. And this latest crop of players, well, they're going to be banging on the door as well. As I mentioned, Eddie Howe will undoubtedly be in the frame. He's got a League Cup Finals winner's medal to his name. And who knows what else by the time it comes around, this possible scenario. Newcastle, they're going to be in the Champions League. How far will they progress in that? With that comes sort of the added experience that he'll gain. But still, when you put them up against each other, only one of them has been through the FA's pathway and come away with trophies. And then you have to ask who else would be in the frame. Last time around, all the talk, it was Graham Potter this, Graham Potter that. Do we need to see him given a full season with West Ham to see his real credentials? Frank Lampard is also another name that gets circulated. Currently at Coventry, he took them to the playoff semi-finals after just over half a season. I think realistically he'll need to be in the Premier League before he is really considered. Steven Gerrard, another name. Well, he's currently out of work, so probably not in the frame. And then do we have to bring Gareth Southgate's name back into the fold? Could he be tempted? He recently picked up his knighthood and was interviewed about it, saying he was happy away from the job. He was learning some new things. He was sort of keeping out of the way. But could the FA entice him back? They're all questions for a later date, but you'd hope that the FA will already be considering options, especially considering Thomas Tuchel's, dare I say it, quality and style of football in the last 4 games underneath him. Now the weather. I said about the weather, didn't I? We're English, we talk about the weather. As I say, throughout that under-21 tournament, it was hot. It apparently reached like 33 at times. The players had drinks breaks in each half, something that we've seen on occasions in recent years as, well, frankly, as our climate changes. And as much as I dislike the Club World Cup and have very little reason to comment on it here, but with the World Cup being held in the United States next year, the Club World Cup has given us an insight as to potentially what it's going to be like. It's seen numerous matches being paused due to the weather. Over in the States, they have this rule whereby if there is a storm and lightning within 8 miles of the stadium, then both the players and the spectators have to seek safety and refuge, meaning some of the games have been paused from 40 minutes to 2 hours. That's just ridiculous. It's crazy. You imagine if that was to happen in the World Cup. There'd be games overlapping other games, which I don't think is something that has happened, until you get to like the final group stage. But for TV purposes, they like to try and keep them one after another. And from memory, the 1994 World Cup held in the States, I'm fairly certain none of those games were held up because of the weather. It was hot back then. I've said about it before, the Republic of Ireland game against Mexico, I think, was incredibly hot. There was Steve Staunton wearing a hat as the national anthems were being played. There was Jack Charlton throwing water about. John Aldridge got a little bit hot under the collar. But I don't think any of the games over there were paused as they have been in this Club World Cup. Looking back, there was only one stadium that was covered with a roof back in '94, the Pontiac Silverdome in Detroit. That hosted 4 group games. But even then, it appears it didn't have a particularly good air conditioning system, and the humidity apparently would just go up and up and up. The USA's Thomas Dooley described it as one of the worst places to play in. So looking ahead to next year, There's the stadium in Dallas and the one in Houston, both of those in Texas. They both have roofs. So you'd imagine that they maybe wouldn't get affected should any issues occur. But I guess if the roof is open, then it can't close immediately. But also the stadium in Atlanta and LA, the SoFi Stadium, they both have roofs as well. However, the MetLife Stadium in New Jersey doesn't have one. Why do I mention the MetLife Stadium? Because that is the stadium that will host the World Cup final. Can you imagine if the showpiece game of next year is held up by a storm for anywhere between 40 minutes to 2 hours? Wouldn't go down well at all. I read also that the Irish women's side, they played a couple of games over in the States recently, in Colorado and Cincinnati, Ohio. The temperature and the humidity over there was stupidly high, to the point that the players, especially the Irish players who weren't used to it, were just unwell. They were asking to come off. FIFA have always said that players' well-being is a priority, but with situations like this, clearly it seems they don't care as much as they say they do. Obviously, the 2022 World Cup was famously moved to the winter in Qatar because of the intense heat out there. But here we are, less than a year away from the finals next year, 2026. We've seen the intense heat and weather patterns out there during this Club World Cup. FIFA have not said one thing about this World Cup being moved, and it's obviously far too late in the day for it to be changed now. But how they didn't see this coming, I've no idea. It could have the potential to be a real disaster next year. I don't know if some of you remember the 1996 Atlanta Olympics. I don't think it's held fondly in the memory of the Olympic Committee. FIFA will not want the World Cup of 2026 to be remembered in the same way that people remember those 96 Atlanta Games. And what I will say about this Club World Cup is that it feels like the season hasn't ever ended, if you kind of get what I mean. Regardless of me not taking much of an interest in it, you can't escape chatter about it, be it on the news, the telly, in WhatsApp groups. For some of these players, they'll not really get a proper break between seasons. And I'm looking at it from an England perspective. Harry Kane, he was involved in the Euros this time last year, as was Jude Bellingham. Both of those are still, at time of recording, they're both out there involved with Bayern Munich and Real Madrid. Phil Foden of Manchester City was involved last year in the Euros. Manchester City have recently been knocked out. At time of recording, Cole Palmer is still out there with Chelsea. But both of these players, both of these clubs, will return to a Premier League season that begins on the 15th of August. There might not be much change straight away, but as the season progresses, will their squads cope? How will their squads cope? Will fatigue set in? Will there be an increase of injuries? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But it's okay, though, because both of those clubs, they've got an extra few million in the bank, haven't they? FIFA, well, undoubtedly, they'll have done all right out of it too. Infantino can probably get himself a couple of new pairs of white trainers, can't he? But there, I've said my piece on that. I want to move on to something else now, some sad news. The passing of Alan Peacock at the age of 87. Alan won 6 England caps and scored 3 goals, this between 1962 and 1965. He was born the 29th of October 1937 in Middlesbrough, the town and team where he would begin his career with. Ayresome Park was a place he called home for 10 years as a striker, alongside Brian Clough. Peacock is the club's 7th all-time top goal scorer, with 141 goals in 239 games. He then moved to Don Revie's Leeds United in 1964, where he scored 30 in 65 games, although injuries began to hinder his time there. In 1962, he made the England World Cup squad that went to Chile. Now, his debut was actually in that tournament. It was in a group stage victory over Argentina, where he became the 806th player to wear the Three Lions. Now, he opened his scoring account later in the year in a home championships match against Wales at Wembley. He got a brace in a 4-0 win. Surprisingly, he wouldn't be selected again until October 1965, where we again played Wales. But his last game came in November of 1965, once again at Wembley, where he scored the winner against Northern Ireland. Those injuries I mentioned, well, they hampered his time in the game. He moved from Leeds to Plymouth in 1967, but would have to retire a year later, aged 30, because of them. Now, he was diagnosed with dementia in 2018 and passed away on the 29th of June 2025, aged 87. Now, I'd like to pass on my condolences to his family and friends. Let's leave it there, shall we? Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Always appreciated. You can follow the show on social media. Just search Three Lions Podcast. Give it a like, give it a follow. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, the Women's Euros is taking place at the moment over in Switzerland. The Lionesses will be in action, and I'm hoping to join someone who is out there following both England and Wales. So stay tuned, and hopefully I can bring you that. So until then, take care of yourselves. Cheers.